Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at another video. All right, so it's like 4 a.m. and I know we have a Laker Cleveland video to do. I didn't do the homework for that, and I wanted to turn on the camera anyway, talk about the Lakers. So this is like a Laker talk, I guess. No rant, of course, since we're winning. There's nothing to complain about. But we do want to talk about a few things. So one thing I want to talk about is continued appreciation for how the Lakers have been playing as a whole. Some of the sacrifices necessary for this team as stars and its role players alike. They've taken on the sacrifices with a great deal of respect for the game, and we've asked for that from them. It looked kind of murky early on. Guys didn't look like they wanted to make that decision. It was a little bit of a slow start, but ultimately, the turnaround has been significant, and we know that because the turnaround has been so significant, and because we feel like our team has been paying attention to what it needs to pay attention to, it's not just that we're beating teams we're supposed to beat. We're doing it in ways that show that we've been studying ourselves and working on those tendencies that I always mention. And because of it, we're in a good space. Our confidence is high, our talent level is high, and ultimately we feel like we have an opportunity to win a championship if we retool with what we have available to us, which is 2 picks and maybe a few players that on some contracts that might be decent for some teams to take on if they want to create cap space for themselves. So that's hopefully what we can do for ourselves at the moment. We don't know exactly what the different trade opportunities the Lakers may have available to them may be right now, but a lot has been said about the Chicago Bulls and Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan. And I think what would have to go out is some variation of Russell Westbrook and trade equity. I mean, pick equity, excuse me. No, I'm not too excited about that. And even though we know that's an upgrade in talent, not in the ways that we probably need it to be. So we're moving on from that as it pertains to being something that we want the Lakers to do. Now, if they happen to do it, we'll adjust. Of course, it's not like we're going to not welcome people as they are traded here, but we want to make smart decisions as a franchise, and we don't believe that bringing in more offensive players without a purpose to enhance our defense as well really does what it needs to do when you're considering what Russell Westbrook's functionality and shot taking expectancy coupled with his durability expectancy is going to be. It just doesn't seem like a great plus for our team unless we can immediately retrade what it is that we get in that trade, parlay it to a third team for stuff that's more fitting for what it is we want to be. So that's really the key. Do you want to do a trade with Chicago or something like that, and then take the pieces that they are giving us and maybe involve a third team so that we can make the trade more, savvy or whatever the word would be for us? And I think that's something the Lakers need to consider. Not necessarily, the idea of making specific trades with one team, but trying to gather about 5 and 6 teams together to maneuver a good trade for everyone and find that exact perfect combination of complementary pieces that can send us into a space we can be confident with. And that's ultimately where I want us to go. I want us to be very, very creative, or don't do anything at all. And the reason why I say don't do anything at all is because I feel really comfortable having those 2 picks in place. It's some bit of future that we can look at and say there's more flexibility than otherwise we will have if we give it up and make a trade, say like we did for Patrick Beverley, where it turns into less equity, which is what we've been prone to do as a franchise as of late. So not doing anything, given the fact that this team has turned it around, is probably a good thing because they're learning themselves, and this is who's winning. Once you take some pieces out and put some new pieces in, now you have an entirely new team. And who knows if they're going to have the identity that this team has or the abilities that this team can put down. So at this point, you want to be very careful not to find yourself rearranging things in a bad way, because you can very easily do that by getting rid of the wrong pieces. So, at the end of the day, I think the Lakers LeBron and AD. Would like the Lakers to retool, particularly provide them some size. You don't have to, move heaven and earth, but we can do some small deals to just make sure we're taller down there. As I look around and I say what's realistic for us, the reason why we're not necessarily a championship contender is because we're lacking in size in some very key areas, and we think some of the contenders that we are ultimately going to see are just going to be taller than us. And that's something that we can remedy very quickly by just retooling a few things, retooling a few guys, not necessarily even upgrading in talent very much, but just making sure that we upgrade in size. Get a couple taller guards down there or something like that, or rearrange it so that we're using the taller guards more often. I think that's what it really comes down to. As I did more considering of what I think Darvin Ham is doing, and in regards to what who he played against the Wizards, I felt that him playing Patrick Beverley and Dennis Schroeder was a means of him trying to get those guys to have confidence so that they could help us at the end of the season. But the reality is, I don't know that grooming those particular players is the way to go. We probably should be grooming the younger, taller guys like Austin Reeves and Troy Brown, Winyon, Gabriel, etc. Those guys are probably the guys we should be trying to get to be playing well in the later stages of the season when we need players the most. Because at the end of the day, the same problems we have right now with our size is the same problem we're going to have then if we're relying on those players. And that's ultimately why I want us to kind of just disarm our team from having that problem by getting us taller guys. That's what it really comes down to. Darvin's going to play who he plays. And some of these guys we really, really like. But at the end of the day, if we have to rely upon them and they're to our detriment and our goals aren't realistic because of that, then that's what we need to fix. It's that simple. When I look at some of the teams around the league that are really doing things, you must have wings to defend the perimeter. You must be able to get out in the fast break as well as stop the fast break. You must be able to rebound the ball. And you got to have enough strength in each and every position in order to win against some of these hyper athletic guards and overly talented bigs. So I look at the Lakers and I say we're getting away with stuff because of the high level that Anthony Davis is playing at, and ultimately because of how smart we're playing. But it shouldn't be that difficult for us to win games. And the higher the talent gets, the lower our range for being able to make mistakes can be. We need to be able to make ourselves just ultimately better, raise our entire floor. And that's ultimately what's going to give us the opportunity to be able to rest AD and Bron a little more and not tumble down the standings. So if anything, I want to see the Lakers strategize that way. Try to put us in a position to, in the short term, within this year and next year, try to make us just a bit more full as a team as it pertains to size. Give Darvin Ham more guys to choose from that can make it so that we have less size disadvantages. Because that's ultimately my biggest complaint this season. I think Darvin's doing good things. I think the players that he wants to believe in are talented players. I just think that it comes down to, because they're talented players, we could probably find talented players who are taller than them just the same and trade them in doing so. It shouldn't be too hard, man. There are teams in this league who need what Dennis Schroeder can do. He's a guy who can provide, as we saw, many assists, several steals in the game. Mid-range game is nice, all of that. I think there are certain teams that have a lot of defensive players. I look at a team like maybe the Washington Wizards, the team we just saw. That would be an excellent spot for Dennis Schroeder because he can be the starting point guard there and run around all season long and just put up the stats necessary to get himself that big contract, and maybe we can get that contract from that franchise. These are the type of situations I'm looking at. Like Monte Morris, in my opinion, is not a point guard. He's a shooting guard and probably would play great next to Dennis Schroeder and that type of thing and that type of scenario. You look at some of these other teams, it's like they're going to be shuffling players around. I look at a team like the Brooklyn Nets, to be honest with you, and say Dennis Schroeder would be great there, given the fact they have Ben Simmons coming in and out of the lineup. There's so much uncertainty with the rest of their guards. In regards to Kyrie Irving as well, he's somebody they're probably trying to move on from. That would be a perfect place for him. So it's like I look at Dennis Schroeder and I think of him as a piece that, even though he's talented as all heck and can help us, the problem that we have is the fact that we're so small, and we want to lean on Patrick Beverley as well. And you guys know I'm a proponent for keeping Patrick Beverley for chemistry reasons, but I don't know that it makes all the sense in the world to have him on the roster. And Dennis Schroeder. And we got Lonnie Walker at like 6'4" in height as well in regular rotation. It's like we got too many small guys, and it's like when you go for size, you're going for younger, underdeveloped guys like Brown and Austin Reeves who still have more developing to do. So it's like when we do go to size, we're going with inexperience. It's just the reason why I think coach is trying to instill so much confidence in Patrick Beverley and Dennis Schroeder. It's because he doesn't want to have to lean on underdeveloped guys when it matters most near the end of the season. He wants to rely upon those guys he can count on. And so we got to disarm him of that. It's up to Rob Pelinka to shuffle the lineup enough to assure that his options are aligned with what it is that we need. That's the bottom line. Sometimes you just got to disarm coaches. If a guy, a coach believes in a guy a lot, obviously you don't want to piss a coach off by getting rid of his guy. So I'm not suggesting we do anything stupid like that. But what I am saying is sometimes coaches just going to allow a guy to stay on the floor to the detriment of the team because he really believes in that guy and what his intangibles are. And maybe he sees something that the rest of us don't see. But at the end of the day, if you're not pleased with what you see as the organization and you have size disadvantages and mismatches and things like that, then what you put on the floor is ultimately what he's choosing from. So that's all there is to it, man. I don't like the size disadvantages that we find ourselves with, the small ball that we constantly play with. It's unnecessary, man. We don't have to do that. We can very easily audible out of that and find ourselves having the same type of success, because at the end of the day, the whole focal point of what we're doing is making sure that everything we do assures that Anthony Davis can play at the level that he's at right now. So although we didn't put this team together with the intention of Anthony Davis being this type of workhorse, now that he's showing us what his true functionality is, over the next several months, I expect the Lakers to be moving in the direction of making sure that he's comfortable and that he has everything to be equipped to be that player. And if we're not looking at him as our big T-Rex, building around him like Shaquille in his prime from this moment going forward, then we're looking at this the wrong way. Another thing I want the Lakers to understand, and I say this because I noticed it, and I think it can help us with what Anthony Davis will need going forward. His explosiveness, it's not where it needs to be. That big dunk where he dunked on like two players and they didn't call it, from which they should have, he was dunking that hard because initially he was trying to dunk from halfway in the free throw line and didn't get off the ground hardly. We're going to have to understand that his lift is not there. Even though he's working on his conditioning, his back's still not 100%, and that play showed me that. So what we're going to have to do is continue to keep strong and big players around him and allow him the opportunity to not have to take on the responsibilities we have him taking on right now. Because even though he's going crazy and he's energetic and he's playing well, it doesn't mean that his strength is where it needs to be. If it were, he would have connected on that initial dunk instead of having to do that double slam on two people dunk where he went absolutely crazy and hung on the rim and did all that pulling the ball down. I know what he was doing. He wanted us to forget the fact that he barely got off the ground before that. And so I'm one of those people that looks into stuff like that, not as a means of trying to embarrass Anthony. Heck no. As a means of helping the organization see what they need to do to assure that he does not find himself needing to rely upon any athleticism whatsoever for himself. Offensive rebounding, he needs assistant players down there to help him with that going forward. For the times when he's not in a zone like right now, for the times when his body is hurting, we're going to have to keep quality bigs on the floor to assist him with stuff like explosiveness, like rebounding and things of that nature. That Jeremy Grant idea was always a good one. We need that type of player. That's why I always want us to keep Wenya and Gabriel on the team. With that being said, I like Juan Toscano Anderson. He's a very important piece to this team because of that. We need to upgrade. He needs to be upgraded. We can't rely upon him in that way. He's an active player. He's solid, but because his piece is so important to what it is I'm talking about, it must be upgraded. We can take Dennis Schroeder, Kendrick Nunn maybe, depending on what you want to do, and his piece, and turn it into a more talented version of his piece, because that's exactly what I think Anthony Davis is going to need. You're going to need him to get you're going to need, and you're not going to get this particular player, but you need a Herbert Jones. You need a what's the guy over there in Dallas with the three last names like mine? two last names like mine. I can't think of his name, but we need Swiss Army knife wing players that are extremely expensive. You know, players like that. Vanderbilt, McDaniels, either one of them. Those are the type of guys I'm thinking about. Get us one of those or two of those to align next to Anthony Davis, pogo stick type players, who can help with some of the things that I'm talking about. Jackson Hayes type guys. Man, I don't know who's all out there, but we need them type of dudes who can assist with ultimately everything necessary for Anthony Davis to not have to rely upon any explosiveness going up against other players who are probably just as tall and long as him. Luckily enough, some of these teams that have those type of players aren't really contenders. I look at Orlando Magic as a team we probably will not match up well with going forward, until we get the type of size necessary, because you got to understand, we have an Anthony Davis-like player who's tall and long, but they got like 4 of them. You know what I mean? They're not as talented as Anthony, but that ain't the point. And they got like 4 of them, and they're all young. So it's like when you talk about what's realistic, you try trotting in there with Patrick Beverly and Dennis Schroeder as your backcourt. When they're fully developed, they're going to beat you by a lot of points. And that's just how that's going to go. So even though they're a tank team, they're pretending like they suck right now. The reality is they got like 7 7-footers on their team. And that's what I mean by what's realistic. When you go up against squads like that, you just must respect size. And if you don't have size from which to choose from, you're going to be at a disadvantage, even with a great level playing Anthony Davis. You know, some of them jump hooks and stuff like that, it's not as simple when everybody's 7'1" with a 7'5" wingspan. He's like an average height person at that point, and it's going to be relying upon us to assure that he has matchups on the floor that help him with that. Because he can beat a bunch of people his height. He better than everybody his height. That's the point. It's not like we don't expect him to cook. But if he's only one that size, the double teams, the triple teams, they're going to overcome him, and we're going to be relying upon, Troy Brown and Walker and Braun and all those other guys to make up the scoring. And they're going to be disrupted by that type of length too. So we just need to get ourselves more Wenyen Gabriel. This is why I say play Wenyen so much. It ain't just because I love the player. It's because he provides us that opportunity to match up with players like that every night. This is why I always say get 40 Jones back on the team, because he's that tall and long, and he can help with some of that as well. You know, you like players like Brandon Clark over there in Memphis is another one I think about like that. You just want these type of players on your team because they can help you with the stuff that I'm talking about. Bron and AD, they don't have the type of explosiveness. Westbrook, they're all older guys. And as they continue to play more games, even though they'll get in better shape, that explosiveness is going to just wane over time as Father Time comes around. So we got to assist them. As they age, we got to make sure that the players around them are young and can move. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying all the way around. Get us some young, active, power forward wing players. It would be great if they could shoot the 3 very well, but if they can't shoot the 3 very well, see to it that they can defend it very well. That is key. Don't give me no old guys either who lack athleticism, with all due respect. We can only use but so many PJ Tuckers. We need we need those guys to be able to jump out the gym. They got to be more like Jones in New Orleans, basically. So, yeah, I don't know how we probably through the draft. You keep one of your picks, you get some second rounders, and you try to develop one of those guys if you can find them through the draft. Intangible guys, your Jeremy Sohans, whoever it is who can ultimately do that for you. Think about all kinds of players in my head as I try to scan the league. I'm just trying to figure out who they are. By the way, this is not a Laker conversation, but that Nembhard kid, the one who hit the shot against us, he went crazy against Steph Curry last night. So it's one of those situations where even though some of these no-name dudes who are rookies are coming out and playing well against us, it's going to age well, man. That Pacer loss, it's going to age well because Nembhard's going to turn into something. You know what I mean? That's the reality of it. Dude put up all-star numbers last night in a very massive way on both assists and points and defense. And like I said, when he beat us, I was more impressed what he did on the defensive side. So as far as I could tell, that's someone to covet. If you're going to do a deal with the Pacers, make sure that Andrew Nembhard is a part of it, because he is going to be very, very, very special in the NBA. As long as he's giving starters minutes, that was proven last night against Steph Curry. So if the Lakers can acquire him, Yeah, do it before his value goes up any higher. Like, just do it. That's one of them type of things. And that's the type of stuff the Lakers need to do. You need to be able to find Andrew Nembhard before he has the performance he had last night. You know what I'm saying? That's what the Lakers need to do. You need to go get those players before they step out into the water. And you know what I mean? Because guys' values are going up immediately just because they're very, very talented coming into this league, and nobody knows who they are, man. You look at the OKC Thunder. I keep talking about how they keep racking up wins because everybody on that team is a damn lottery pick. So any deal you do with a team like that is going to bring you back some value. So yeah, those type of things I just want the Lakers to be active in thinking about, because these little kids popping up all over the place, and there's a couple of them who are still laying dormant, ones that you just haven't heard of yet, but I know they can do something, and I just wish I had them on my mind right now. I can name some of those players, but they're out there, man. So yeah, as I look at our squad, with this road trip, I'm really encouraged by the fact that, frankly, some of these teams are just struggling right now. They're good teams, but they just run some injuries. They got players coming in and out of the lineup, stuff like that. So I think we can catch some teams. I look at this Cleveland team, the way they played against the Knicks. I don't think you're going to catch them off guard. They're obviously thinking about us, but they didn't play their greatest game. They're not in the midst of a wonderful stretch of basketball for them. We should be able to play well and beat them, and that's not something I would have said 2 weeks ago. Now look at the Toronto Raptors. They've been dropping games against everybody. When I say everybody, they've been losing, man. And I know Scotty's on his way back. Obviously, Pascal's out as well. They've got guys in and out of their lineup. So it's like, this is a good time to come into Toronto with a world-class AD and a hot hand Bron. It's a great time to do that. So it's like, I don't know who will be available for those games. Obviously, it's a road trip, so I expect to start sitting some people at some point. I don't expect to see too many of the stars against Detroit. But this kind of thing is like, since games mean so much to this roster, I think we're coming in with a certain level of focus. I mean, I'll be very disappointed if we don't. I expect teams to kind of be caught off guard by that focus in a way, or some of them just won't be able to beat us the way we're playing right now. We'll be able to outclass them. So hopefully we can keep that up, keep our tendencies up, keep our confidence up, because that is really how well we're playing, so long as we stay true to what it is that matters to us, and beat those demons that ultimately have been kicking our butt early on in the season when we went down 10-2 in the standings. And we know those are 3-point shooting demons, defensive, inconsistencies, transition defensive issues, defensive rebound issues, as we've mentioned many times. Things that we've really worked hard at overcoming. And I'm so very happy that the team has done so, because it shows in our production against both good and bad teams. I look at the Phoenix Suns loss. That was a winnable game. We talk about games that we can look back on and say, man, we should have won that. I don't look at that Phoenix Suns game, as if that was a game that we just could not win. We just didn't take good shots or play as smart as we needed to play against that Phoenix team, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's how that game went. We just took some bad shots and did some things that ultimately hurt ourselves in their building. But it wasn't like they were just going crazy, outclassing us or nothing like that. Am I wrong? That was the same game where, because that was the game where we did the pushing right there, when Patrick Beverley pushed DeAndre Ayton down, and then it was one of those things where DeAndre Ayton started playing well after that. They hadn't been kicking butt like that the whole game. If we would have came in there with the Anthony Davis focus we got right now, we would have beat them Suns. I mentioned the Suns because they're at the top of the Western Conference. They're the number one team, and if that's as good as it gets in the West, if we play our best, we should be able to beat most of these guys. Now, I look at the Pelicans, and I've told y'all since the summertime, I think the Pelicans are the best team in the West. So them being the number 2 seed, not surprising to me. It's not even about any one single player. They got a collection of guys that just fit together very well. And if they all are clicking at the same time, I do think they're probably the most talented team in the West. That's just from top to bottom what it is that I believe they have. We will need to get better in order to beat them, is essentially what I'm saying. If you run into the New Orleans Pelicans in a 7-game series, they have more talent to beat us. But we understand that we can make a trade or two and get the type of size necessary to give ourselves what we need to get ourselves a shot. But their benches ultimately right now what's really going to hurt us. The Alvarados, the Joneses, the Murphys, we don't have nothing for that. What we will need is for all of the bench guys, including Kendrick Nunn and Winion, all of these guys that are working on themselves, they're going to have to play sharp and perfect on top of AD playing sharp and perfect for 4 straight games in order to beat that Pelican series, that team. And that's ultimately why I'm saying we need to keep on working against our tendencies, because they do have some teams out there with more talented benches. That Boston team, we ain't ready for a team like that in the 7-game series right now. Too deep, too defensive. Robert Williams coming back. We would need a trade to beat them. So, like, these are the type of things where it's like no matter how good this team gets, we would love to avoid certain matchups. And that's why I think the trade is ultimately important if we want to compete for a championship. And that's going to require us to have a lot of faith that Anthony Davis is going to stay healthy and play at this level, that LeBron James is going to stay healthy and play at this level, that whatever we do with Russell Westbrook will work out. If we trade him, we'll trade him for the right stuff. If we don't trade him, he'll stay healthy and to play the way he's been playing, or better actually, so that we can have that chance. So it's just a lot of stuff that has to fall into place, and I don't blame the team for making a trade that ultimately shakes some things up to make us better because of it. You don't want to say that Anthony Davis is playing this well and then look over and say we don't have enough because we didn't do enough. We didn't do all we could. That's just not what you want to say. But then what you also don't want to say is we made a bad trade. Anthony Davis went down and we fell short of a championship, and now our flexibility is compromised going forward. That's what you don't want to say too. So one false move and your future's dead. That's the sad part about our franchise. But the good thing about it is now it's not garbage in the balance. As we were saying 2 weeks ago about what we thought of this team, it was trash on our tightrope. No, sir. No, Anthony Davis has single-handedly turned that around. Now we got something we could work with on this tightrope. So if we are going to be in the balance, at least it's not a bad thing standing there. All in all, we're happy with the turnaround, but since everything is contingent on us staying healthy, we really, really think it's important that everybody continue to be involved in our offense and defense alike. We must keep guys active. We must keep them feeling a part of what we're doing. That's what got us here. We can't have it so that Anthony Davis getting all the shots takes away from everybody else, just like we don't want LeBron James shots taken away from everybody else. It's never about whether or not superstars can put up massive numbers. That's why they're superstars. They definitely can. We need them to be able to play together. And if the stars and the role players aren't on a string, and Anthony Davis can put up 70 points in one game, and that'd be great. And we will lose the games that matter, and ultimately we will watch somebody else host the championship at the end of the year. And that'll be that. I don't think anybody wants that. So I think ultimately it's about winning basketball games, and the way that's going to help us win those games is to keep everybody involved. So that's going to be the discipline. Give AD the ball as much as we need to, but don't overfeed AD to the detriment of everyone else's rhythm. And that's going to be on LeBron James to sacrifice the most, because a lot of times LeBron James is going to think that when AD's not shooting, it's his time to score. And that's to the detriment of what it is I'm talking about. Because we need everybody else to score. And because we need to focus everything on AD, it's going to be on LeBron James to pick his shots and make them count. I'm not telling him not to shoot. Absolutely not. But I am saying if AD's taking 27 shots and LeBron's taking 27 shots, it's impossible for other guys to get in there with him. It's impossible for us to keep those guys good enough to play well enough while AD and Bron are not going to be there, which is inevitably going to happen because they're going to need to miss games just off the strength of where they're at. And we need to allow them to. So that's the most important thing. If we're not strategizing to be good enough for them to miss games, as I've said in previous videos, then we're setting ourselves up for a big failure, and also setting ourselves up to be leaning on them too much. And you're going to want those guys in future years, so you don't want to lean on them too much. So that's really what it is, man. And keeping balance about ourselves. I'm preaching balance tonight because that's ultimately what we have been accused of not being. We're overzealous. We're bipolar as a team and have been pretty much the whole time Bron has been here every year. We get too high, we get too low. We get too quick to give up on stuff. We get too quick to want to make changes. We're eccentric about improving things before we actually know what it is we have a lot of times. And luckily enough, we have a franchise that has the opposite mindset. It leads us in a direction that doesn't allow our overzealous minds to undo certain things that otherwise shouldn't be undone. Glad we didn't trade Anthony Davis. I'm glad we didn't trade Russell Westbrook. I'm glad we didn't blow this team up all the different times I wanted to, because not doing so has taught me many, many valuable lessons in regards to how to view certain franchises when they have talented players. And we have that. We just need to find a way to get them to play together more and ultimately get the most out of the players around us, around them. And as a result of that, we'll get what we're supposed to have of our efforts. So that's what it all is about for me as a fan. I'll preach this till I'm out of here. I want the Lakers to continue to make good organizational decisions. And I'm learning as I go along how best to use my voice as I continue to learn these valuable lessons about not giving up on people and not allowing how a certain system will allow you to believe a player is a certain value. Because that's what we did last year. Thinking Russell Westbrook was who he was because he was playing for Vogel. Thinking Anthony Davis was who he was because he was playing for Vogel. Absolutely not. THT and all these other guys, same thing. We have misevaluated talent doing that. And I think it was a lesson learned. And I hope to see everybody else from behind the Laker front office also have that in mind as well. Let's not make that mistake. Although we don't expect to have any regime changes anytime soon. Everything should be catered to how Darvin Ham can use them. And this brings me to another point. Some of the guys we let go of, I want to see how Darvin Ham would use them. Call me crazy, but I want to see what Kuzma looks like in the Darvin Ham lineup. I want to see what not THT, I guess we can't bring him back, but these are some of the guys like KCP. I would love to see what Darvin Ham could do with some of those guys, because I really do think their value was messed up in that small ball, stand around offense garbage that we kept on the floor for the last couple of years. And now some of them dudes, you could see how their pieces would be used differently if we had Darvin running the show. So that's something that if the Lakers want to go back and get Kuzma or something like that, I'm completely on board, because I think he's developed into the player that we wanted him to be. And I think he's now in a system that would ultimately make him who he needs to be. And his height and size is exactly what it is that we're missing, truth be told. I'm not saying that we couldn't get other players as well. You don't want to just go back and get the old guy, because what ends up happening when you get the old guy a lot of times, they remember you traded him. So the first thing they do when they hit free agency is get the hell out of there, leave you high and dry. So we don't want to bring in scoring pieces and stuff like that. But what we do understand is sometimes when you let go of stuff thinking that it's bad and you see where it is when it goes somewhere else, and you realize you could do more with it now. With this new regime than you would have been able to when you were assessing things the way you were. So that's where we are with some of the players we let go of, to be honest with you. So we need to bring some of them back. And so I don't know if the Lakers are considering that, but when I look at some of the more important pieces we let go of, I would love to offer them free agency money when the time comes around. I look at a guy like Brandon Ingram. He needs to be in a purple and gold. We drafted him. He's awesome. There's no reason he should be playing anywhere else. I know he doesn't want to come back here, but it's the type of stuff I'm talking about. D'Angelo Russell, that should have never happened. That should have never happened. You don't get rid of a guy who's that talented when he's like 19, 20 years old. That's just stupid. You draft him with the second overall pick and you let him go because he did something immature. He's a kid. Kids do immature stuff. That was absolutely the wrong way to go. I understood what Magic was thinking, and he had the right idea based on the cap situation and restraints, based on what you had to pay D'Angelo Russell and based on what we needed. I understand why he did what he did. Wish it wasn't set up that way. But at the end of the day, giving up on that kid at that time, bad organizational decision. Absolutely bad. So these are Julius Randle, another one. These are lottery picks. So as I look at the situation, I'm like, all right, revisionist history makes no one happy. But what we can do is try our very best to undo some of that. If we can reacquire some of the guys that we initially drafted that we know can play, that we know didn't have the type of Darvin Ham coach in place that ultimately would make them their best self. I think some of those guys would love to have Darvin Ham and their coach as their coach in the situations they're in right now. I'm pretty certain Julius Randle would love Darvin Ham to be the coach of the New York Knicks. No disrespect to Tibbs, but if they fired Tibbs and took our coach, I'm pretty sure Julius would throw a party right now. You know? Go up to Minnesota. I'm sure they love their coach, but they want Darvin Ham more than they coach. And that's the point. It's like Darvin Ham makes us an attractive place alone without anything else. Darvin Ham would garner attention in Sacramento, even though I think Mike Brown is doing an excellent job, by the way. But like that's the type of coach we have. So when you consider pieces and what it is you're bringing, you understand that he may be able to enhance what it is that you're bringing and improve the value of it, depending on what type of piece it is, so long as it ain't Patrick Beverley. You know what I mean? But seriously, I think players, particularly players that lack motor, he's showing that he can find that motor in them. Guys who are lacking the ability to commit, I'm not saying throws a bunch of bad apples into his locker room, but you're seeing what he's able to do with Russell Westbrook. Have you seen any other coaches been able to get Russell Westbrook to come off the bench and buy into a system like this? Get Russell Westbrook not to turn the ball over in a win against a contender? When was the last time you seen something like that? You haven't. And so this is why I'm giving Darvin Ham so much praise, because I think we hit a home run. I think we might have hired the next great coach. I really believe that. He's just going to have to work his rookie stuff out. And we're going to have to allow him to do it and be patient with him as he does it. Because some of these mistakes that he's making with size and mismatches are really glaring. And I'm pretty sure he'll figure it out. Or we'll figure it out, like I said, by giving him better options of players to put on the floor. So that's what it is, man. That is what it is. I'm loving what I'm seeing. Of course, I will give you guys that Cleveland video. Lord knows we're going to be talking a lot about the Lakers today. But that's what it's about, man. That matchup today will be at 4:30. So, yeah. I will get that to you guys as soon as I feel like it, because I just got to be talking for 36 minutes. I ain't about to do another 36, but I will in several hours. So I appreciate you guys rocking with BDF 44. I thank y'all for watching. I'm out.